Hey, what's going on YouTube? James Carrion here, and today we are starting a new series. So I'm really excited about this to venture out a bit from my typical reviews to start talking a little bit about the actual parts of watches or different aspects or elements of watches. And I think that this is important when you start to get into watch collecting. You got to understand what some of these things are because there's a lot of detail. There's a lot of different components and aspects of watches, and so knowing what some of these basic ones are can help you be more comfortable, whether you're just doing research, whether you're having conversations with people, whether you're talking to dealers because you're considering buying a watch. It's good to know what some of these things are just so that you got the vocabulary down. So I'm excited today to start with bezels is what we're gonna tackle first here. So I've got a couple of different examples on the table of different types of bezels. And to make it really simple to start out, the bezel is simply this metal ring that runs around the crystal of the dial. That's the bezel. Now, don't get confused with bevel. That's a whole different thing. That's a different term used more around the finishing of a watch when you talk about beveling on a watch. So maybe we'll cover that at a different point. But today we're just talking about the bezel. And again, it's pretty straightforward. Early on, these were just used to hold the crystal in place. As time went on and we started to add more functionality into watches, we started to see different types of bezels, such as something like this. Now, technically, the tachymeter scale here is not on the bezel itself, but that became commonplace with watches. You'd have a tachymeter on the bezel itself to be able to tell the time and also the speed of a moving object. So, the speed at which something was happening, or simply just a time and event. So it could be, a car leaving the starting line in a race. It could be timing a workout. It could be timing something on the stove. Having that tachymetric scale and then the chronograph functions allowed you to start to be able to time some of those things. And then you had a little more complex bezels. Now, with something like a Sky Dweller or a Datejust, the bezel itself, in most cases, is just from a design perspective to create that luxury experience when it's fluted like this. With the Sky Dweller, it was a little more advanced because it actually became a part of the movement itself to set the watch, and that's a whole different ballgame. But really what you need to know is that there's different types of bezels. There's also different materials with bezels. So again, something like this is going to be simply stainless steel. So very often they'll be the same material as the watch. And then there are some companies like Rolex, for instance, that will add a precious metal component to the watch. So they'll utilize things like, they call this white rollosor. So it's the watch itself is a combination of stainless steel with also white gold on the bezel. Or for instance, like the Yachtmaster they have, that's a platinum bezel. So some different options in terms of materials that you have there. And sometimes, again, they do play into the functionality of the watch. Other times, like again, a Datejust, it's just going to show, the faceting and all the design of it is just solely aesthetics. It's just to make the watch look beautiful, and many of those watches do. So that's a quick little bit about bezels. And again, there's lots of different types, many different materials, kind of a limited range here that I can show you, but everything from having aluminum, so if you look on some Grand Seiko models, they will have aluminum bezels, or pardon me, they'll have titanium bezels because the watch itself is titanium. There's even ceramic now on many watches. So think of something like a Rolex Daytona that has ceramic on it. And ceramic is advantageous because it's a lot more scratch resistant, a lot harder to dent or damage than something like this, or especially a precious metal bezel, which will be a little bit softer than a stainless steel or an aluminum. So you just have to know, or a titanium. So you just have to know what you're looking at and what you're getting into with the watch. Because they do tend to scratch. That's something that you will see often on bezels is little micro scratches. If you hit your wrist on something very often, you can dent it because yes, steel is a hard material, but when you talk about the normal day-to-day wear, that may or may not work with what you do, depending on what you do professionally, how and when you wear your watch. Those things all need to be factored into when you're considering a watch. What type of bezel should you look for and what makes the most sense for you. So keep that in mind, whether you're shopping around, whether you're just doing research and just kind of exploring. Again, the bezel is just that ring around the crystal, but it can have a number of different functions. And so when you're looking at your collection or considering your collection, the key part is to think about, how am I going to use this watch? What use cases will I have? And do I need a bezel that's going to be really scratch resistant or dent resistant? Because that may be important, so that you don't put a nice dent in something that is beautiful, unless you want to send it back to service to have it repaired, polished, whatever that might be. So this is going to be a series, like I say, all around the different parts of watches. Today was bezels. We'll continue to explore more as we go forward, but I hope that you got something out of the video, and I appreciate you for stopping by. So again, my goal for you is that you get out of watches whatever you want to get out of watches, because that is what's going to make you a satisfied collector. So have a great day, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.